Continuous care retirement communities bring together services kind of like all-inclusive vacation packages. You get a team of specialists putting together everything you need to make your life easier now and down the road. But just like all-inclusive resorts where you pay a premium and might not need or like all the amenities, there are trade-offs to consider. Today, we'll dive into the pros and cons of moving to these communities.
All right, so Spencer, today we're going to talk about continuous care retirement communities. Hopefully I don't have to say that too many times fast or I will get tripped up, but we're going to call these CCRCs. And these are a type of community that's really varied, and it can broad spectrum. You can have independent living all the way to skilled nursing care. You can have memory care units. There's a broad array of the benefits, but just like you mentioned in the intro, you may not need everything. So we want to talk about the benefits, the choices that are at play here. And in all of this, we realize that these CCRCs can provide a level of community, a level of care that oftentimes our retiree friends are looking for. There may be some fear of, well, what happens as I age? Will I continue to be able to live in my home? These might offer a different style of being able to continue to have independence, but as you progress down towards death, then the care is still where you need it. So talk us through, what is a CCRC? What are some things that we need to know about them?
So there's a lot to this, but 7 key features that we would typically highlight here. First, there's healthcare services, and this runs the continuum of being able to just have someone that can check in with a nurse, maybe if they have a quick question, all the way to nursing care that is full-time nursing care 24/7 around the clock and anywhere in between. And that's one of the things that is most comforting to clients, is that they have this elevated level of healthcare typically within these communities, and they may build relationships with the service providers over time. So they feel like they're known over a period of time here. Oftentimes clients will move in, they might have independent living. They might have very few healthcare services, but by the time they move to assisted living and then have more needs, then those services can be layered on. A second piece is dining facilities, and it's the same kind of thing that we just talked about. When they move in, if they're independent, completely independent, they may not take advantage of the dining facilities, but then they may take advantage and they may only buy a few meals a week at the dining facility. They may move progressively, though, towards a situation where they have all of their food prepared at that dining facility, just to take off the pressure of that in life, particularly as they age, if they have some health concerns or their focus needs to be at other points. As well, there are fitness and wellness programs. That would be the third thing that can be really helpful, because we just notice as clients age that sometimes they're not wanting to get out and go across town to the gym, or may not have the capacity to see all of their friends that maybe they engaged in some activities with. But if everything is right there, those fitness and wellness programs can be much easier to access and be consistent with, which can really improve quality of life. Yeah. And right alongside that, it's a social opportunity. There's other social and recreational opportunities typically within these communities that can help you build friendships, which can be a huge piece of why this type of community can be great for some folks that are looking in this direction, but also gives just an opportunity to be able to get out and do things. One of the things that's been saddest, I think, about the last few years is watching people that don't have that community and maybe haven't gotten out as much. We've seen a heightened level, and statistically across the United States, but even among our clients, we've seen a number of clients that have moved more quickly towards dementia than we would have necessarily anticipated. And oftentimes we've observed that happens with clients that they're not engaging as much, they're not interacting with as many people. And so this can be one of those nice pieces that comes alongside to kind of provide support recreationally, but also just relationally here. So there's also transportation services. And so this goes part and parcel again with fitness and wellness and these recreational opportunities, but transportation services allow people to get out and do some different things that they might not be able to otherwise. So if we have aging clients and maybe they're not quite as comfortable on the road, particularly in high traffic areas, then they can have these transportation services that can get them to things like maybe going to a ball game, or being able to go to a grocery store, or to be able to go shopping with some friends without having the intensity of needing to drive on the interstate or other things that they might not be comfortable with thereafter. And then the last two pieces, again, go part and parcel. The housekeeping and maintenance side of things, again, oftentimes we'd see clients come in on the independent living side of things. They wouldn't be engaging as much with the housekeeping side of things, but they might layer on that service. Whereas usually when we see folks move in here, one of the things that they love is in these communities that they're no longer having to do mowing the lawn or taking care of all of the pieces outside. Now, of course, they may have a garden, they may enjoy that, but they have a capability of not having to keep up with maintenance outdoors in particular, and then can layer on those housekeeping services as need be later on. And that goes as well with the security services that are provided. So there is a level of protection. Usually there is a gated community or some kind of security presence that's just looking out for all of the residents. Sadly enough, we do know that as people age, they become bigger targets for people, whether it be a scammer on the phone or whether it be someone coming to the door and knocking, or just people that would be interested in taking advantage of folks as they age. So that security presence can provide a helpful support to folks that move to these communities.
Yeah. Well, and as we think about the differentiator between continuous care communities versus moving from your house to an independent living, and then from an independent living to an offsite nursing facility, and then from an offsite nursing facility to maybe a memory care unit, is each one of those times you're moving to a different care provider. Mm-hmm. Whereas these continuous communities, it might all be on a similar property. Mm-hmm. There may be one place where you move from your home now to independent living. And then as you progress, you move similarly just within the community to an assisted living. And then as things progress, maybe you move to memory care, still within the realm of this one community. So you're getting continuous care as you move through life. That's the big difference between maintaining independence in each of the silos is, well, maybe your caretaker changes every single time. And so it's nice to kind of have some of this idea of a CCRC that ages with you. It moves with you in the same community. You're around the same people for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And so we think about these levels of care. You go from independent to assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, even rehab services. There's just a wide array of services that these offer that you may not get if you are staying at home. These aren't necessarily for everybody, but for a subset of people, I think this could be a really tremendous benefit as you think, okay, what do I want the next 10, 15, 20 years of my life to look like?
Well, continuity of people and place can be huge because we know that statistically that if we move people to an assisted living facility, that the rate of depression skyrockets. If we move someone from an assisted living or even their own home to a memory care unit, the level of disorientation is overwhelming. There are a lot of medical professionals that just say, if you can have in-home care, then until you get beyond a certain level of kind of disorientation, if someone's moving towards dementia, because it's so difficult for the patient. So if again, we've already moved in that direction, and now maybe we're just moving across the hall, or maybe you stay in the same place, but you have a few more people checking in on you on a day-to-day basis, that can be a far easier transition, as you mentioned.
Yeah. Well, and as we think about this, it's really important. We've talked about this in the past, but it's really important to plan ahead. Mm-hmm. Whether this is you planning ahead for yourself or you're starting to have conversations with aging parents, you want to have these conversations while you are healthy.
Right.
You don't want to wait until you need the care to have a care plan in place. Mm-hmm. And so really, you need to have these conversations now with your spouse, with your loved ones, with your financial advisor of, hey, what are those desires that you have as you age so that when those decisions come, they're not as jarring. So let's talk through some reasons to consider moving to one of these retirement communities. One is just peace of mind. Like you were talking about, if we make that plan, if we know, okay, I'm going to move to independent living, I'm going to do that as long as I can, but I'm going to stay on site with things that are familiar as I move to assisted living. It can produce peace of mind. Residents can feel secure knowing that support is available as they need. Social engagement, we've talked about this. If you are in a place where it fosters long-term sense of community, a lot of these are run by nonprofit organizations and even religious nonprofit organizations. So if you're surrounded by people with a similar faith background, then there can be really nice benefits of belonging to a community. Our observation sometimes is that aging in place leads to isolation. And so if you can combat isolation by living in community, that can really help the long-term enjoyment and delight in life. We recognize that it's really hard to leave the home that you've been in if you've been in a home for 30, 40, 50 years. But we also want to pair that with what is going to be the next season of life that's going to be the most beneficial and healthy for our clients.
Well, and that's one of the interesting things. I think a lot of families don't recognize the emotional difficulty of serving mom and dad and being the only relational outlet sometimes. Because as they can't get out as much, then if you're the only relational outlet, that can be a heavy, heavy burden. Whereas if you are in one of these communities, then you are one of the relational outlets. You're not the only relational outlet. We do have people that say, well, they push back and say, well, I'm an only child, or I have a perspective that I want to be in home as long as I can. What the thing that oftentimes people are not taking into account, though, is they're not getting out at the same clip as they were maybe 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. As they continue to age, they're not just maybe introverted and having more space. They're really having very, very little interaction with other people. And again, that can lead to mental illness. It can lead to an accelerated level of dementia, more quickly. So we have to be really careful about not just saying, well, this is the way I've always done it, let's continue in this path, but saying, what are the seasons of life and how can we as a family come around and make sure that everyone's cared for in the best possible way.
Right. All right, so Spencer, we've talked up these CCRCs. There's got to be a downside to them. So when we think about a CCRC, what are some of the downsides that can be there?
Well, you have to learn a new acronym first, a CCRC, So, but other than that, first the cost.
Yeah.
It can be substantial. Just like an all-inclusive vacation that we talked about at the start. There are services, amenities that may not be the right fit for you, but you're still going to be paying for them. Now, on the flip side, they can be helpful because you may not know that you'd actually kind of like to have all of those different options. And because you've already paid for it, you're going to engage in it, and it may actually be good for you. Yeah. But it may not, because you may know exactly what you don't need. And if you're especially looking at independent living, you may say, well, gosh, I'm paying for a lot of things that I'm not going to be tapping into or really using there. So it could be a barrier for those with limited financial resources. There is a complexity of the contracts. You've got to read these very carefully because this is a contract oftentimes that you'd enter and it would really be effective almost for the rest of your life. Yeah. You're sometimes putting in a substantial down payment to have space, here, and you may not get that back. Your estate may not get that back, even if you needed to transition, say, to a different place because you had loved ones move or something like that. So there's lots of costs and complexity here that you need to make sure that you're going to be taking advantage enough of the amenities and it's a good enough value for you there. The second piece is that it's tough to actually assess all of these costs and complexities before you get there. You want to talk something about that?
Yeah. So just like you don't know if you like living in a new city until you live in the new city, right. There's a reality that you may not enjoy the continuous care retirement community that you chose. And if you put in that upfront fee, let's say it's $100,000, or I've seen even up to $500,000, that's a significant upfront cost to invest as well the next maybe 20 years of paying that down payment and then a monthly payment, monthly charge. And if you don't like the community, if you don't like the people that you're around, if maybe the dining is not what you expected, if the doctors or nurses that are on site don't provide the level of care that you anticipated, if you've got a contract that you've signed and it's not a good fit, then we really need to see, as we're looking at that contract, is there a way that we can get out of it? There may not be a whole lot of flexibility. But again, you're not going in there for 30 days and saying, do I like this? It's not a short-term commitment here. Right. There might be a way to get out again, but you really have to assess, okay, is this something that I want to look into for the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years?
Right. And the ideal circumstance there is twofold. First, that you would have a period that would be a trial period. Maybe you could live there for a couple of months before you're fully invested. And then secondarily, that there is some kind of recoup mechanism if you need to move to a different place. Let's just say you have son or daughter that is nearby and this seems like a good community. Well, if they move and you want to move to be closer to them, can you recoup that? Or, 5 years down the road, let's just say management changes and that chef that you thought was amazing for 5 years is no longer there. Or, the activities change or the people change. Is there a way that you can recoup some of that value? Again, ideally, yes, there would be. Alongside that, though, there is typically limited flexibility with that. So, not only do we have a difficulty in assessing fit, we've got long-term limited flexibility in most of these places because they want to know that you're fully engaged, you're fully invested, and that they can count on you financially. So that goes both ways, but you want to talk a little bit about that in terms of the flexibility options.
Yeah, again, if you know that you're going to be in this independent living for a long time and you want to stay there, then it could be nice, but you have to be flexible that when you want to move to assisted living, you're moving to assisted living on site. Then you're moving to memory care or more intense care on site. If you are moving there, let's say you've got 5 families that all decide to move in together. Maybe one of them decides, okay, this isn't the right fit. They move out. Maybe the set of family passes away in 5 years. Maybe there's a falling out. Well, now you've got less and less friends in the community. So there's not as much flexibility, again, because you've invested. You may not be able to recoup and then get some of that cost back. Maybe the contract that you signed said, well, you can receive back 90% of the value of that initial payment. Maybe it's only 10%. And so if you've put in $100,000 and you can only take out 10, well, now you've lost a significant sum. And so there's just not as much flexibility. And again, if you don't like the community anymore, are you okay being locked in there? This is a really a challenging place. So you want to talk about maybe the waiting list and some of the other pieces here to consider.
Well, oftentimes it takes a long time to get here. So you've got to put your name on a waiting list. Sometimes you've got to put a significant deposit down just to hold your spot. So you have to plan ahead, but then when you get there, like we've talked about, we're not saying that it's going to be a fit for everybody. And it's going to be best if there is a level of flexibility for you to try on the experience before you're locked in for a long period of time. And you're locked in for a long period of time potentially, and that's one of the things that we always come back to is it's hard to really discern the financial stability of a provider. You can do your best to do due diligence. You can look over contract. You can look over financial statements with a CPA, attorney, financial advisor, and make sure that you're doing some level of due diligence. But you're just never really going to know what a financial institution might be like in 25 or 30 years, their strength. So you have to be content with the fact that you can do some level of due diligence, but this is a long-term commitment for some people, especially if you're moving in with independent living, say in your early 60s, and you might have a desire to be here for 30 years. The larger of the institutions, with more financial backing, maybe larger institutions as a whole that have more options there as well, can be places that can be a little bit more palatable for some of our clients.
Yeah. When we think about how you actually cover the costs of these things, oftentimes if you are moving into this direction, you're knowing that it's a more permanent of a move. So you kind of think about that entry fee as that down payment. So oftentimes what we'll see is folks may sell their primary residence, use the funds from there to then pay the down payment, and then maybe they use the residual value, maybe there's additional level that they have over and above the down payment that they put down to then cover the cost of the monthly fee going forward. Obviously, if you're layering on some of those other things such as dining, it maybe eats away at that additional value that you have, but then you're also not paying for food or housing or taxes or utilities in the same way. And so we kind of just need to look at this and say, okay, what are the fees? What is that initial payment? And making sure that we're looking within the context of a financial plan that this is sustainable for the next 10, 20, 30 years, if that's the direction that clients want to head.
And oftentimes it is. We find that clients they're not engaging in as many hobbies and as much travel as they move to places like this. So it can be a great fit in terms of the financial elements, the trade-off, and then having a level of peace and stability that there is this place that has these kind of services there. So it can be a great fit, and we find a lot of clients really do enjoy this if they make the move, but it kind of takes getting over that hump. So there's a number of different ways as well that we want to explore that you can pay for these. Sometimes there is a life care contract that would be type A. This would be kind of an unlimited level of care. It would be a significant investment up front and might also be a significant investment on a month-to-month basis. A modified contract, a type B, these might also offer some long-term care services or some services overall, but it's not necessarily quite as all-inclusive, and it may not cost quite as much up front. Of course, there's also contracts that would, you put in a certain amount and that amount of services is carved out, but you might also be able to purchase services that would be a la carte kind of on top of that. The last piece would be a fee-for-service type of contract where, you really have a smaller amount that you're investing going in up front. You're paying for those services as you go. Usually the services that you're paying for as you go are a little bit more expensive because they don't have you locked into a contract. So it's harder for them to know how many people they're going to need these services, when they should hire extra help, when they can let people go, all these kinds of different things. So sometimes those life care contracts or those modified contracts, the first two that we talked about, sometimes they can actually lower the bill over time if it's the right fit for you, if you like the level of amenities and support. That last piece there, that fee-for-service contract, can be more expensive sometimes, but it also maybe gives you the most flexibility of being able to get into or out of a contract. So you really, again, you just need to look at the particular institution. Every one of them set up a little bit different. Every one of them has a different contract, a different layout for the fees and the way that they go about things, and a different rationale. You usually get what you pay for, has been our experience, but we have a lot of clients that have really benefited from this and enjoyed this. We also have seen a number of clients that they get to a point where it's kind of too late to move to one of these communities, and either the client or their family say, we wish that we had gone down this path. Now, it's not for everybody.
Right.
Again, not for everybody, but it can be a really, really nice fit, particularly if you're looking to have that stability in community, people, and place over an extended period of time.
Yeah. Well, thanks for walking us through CCRC, Spencer. Again, as you are exploring this as an option, feel free to take that to your financial advisor. Say, is this a wise idea for me, for my financial plan? Clients, if you want to talk to us about it, we would love to look over those things. Always look through the contract as well. Make sure that you are diving into those details. If you need to hire an attorney to look through the contract and explain maybe some of the confusing pieces, it makes sense if you're going to take this long-term approach. Pay a couple $1,000s, really look at the contract well. And with that, we hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to leave comments down below, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. If you like these financial planning videos, please share it with a friend, and if you have questions, go to our website at SiriusRetirement.com. This content was provided by Retirement Planning Services. We are located in Knoxville, Tennessee. You can visit our website at SiriusRetirement.com. The information in this recording is intended for general educational and informational purposes only, and should not be construed as investment advisory, financial planning, legal, tax, or other professional advice based on your specific situation. Please consult with your professional advisor before taking any action based on its contents. Advisory services offered through Retirement Planning Services, LLC.